Hey everybody, Don Georgievich here with Job Interview Tools, and today I'm going to tell you how to answer Tell Me About Yourself. The fast and easy way to do it in 3 simple steps. I mean, most people make this question so much harder than it is. So if you want to know how to answer Tell Me About Yourself the right way, go ahead and let me know now by hitting the like button on this video. Subscribe to my channel and ring the bell. We'll dive right in and we will nail this question once and for all for you. And you'll have a simple, easy framework that you can use and apply to your experience and be able to go into a job interview and just easily and effortlessly tell them about you. So, first thing, there's 3 steps. Where do you start, what do you say, and where to end? So the key to answering this question depends on where you're at in your career. So you might be fresh out of college, or you might have been working for 10 or 20 years. Your answer to tell me about yourself depends on that. So if you're fresh out of college, and let's say you are going to college for accounting, you might say, during high school, I realized that I enjoyed Accounting 1 and Accounting 2. And I found it fascinating. The numbers made a lot of sense to me. And I really enjoyed creating models. And I decided that's what I wanted to do. So I went to college to pursue a career in accounting. And while I was there, I was active in a few different financial clubs. And I furthered my experience in accounting. And I had a couple of internships at, here and there, name those companies. And now I am looking to get an accounting position in a big accounting firm, and hopefully within the next 3 to 5 years, I will seek out my CPA. That's it. That's done. What was that, like 30 seconds? That's all you need to do to answer, tell me about yourself. That's all the employer wants to hear. And you can do that in 20 or 30 seconds. Now, here's the trick. You need to have 2 versions of your answer. So I gave you the short version. You're going to want to have a long version. Now I would encourage you to create your long version first. And the long version, maybe let's say it's 2 minutes long. Now that's still going to be too long to give in an interview, but create a 2-minute version, condense that long version down to maybe it's 45 seconds to a minute. And the long version, it's still going to be the same thing as the short version, so to speak. It's just going to be a little bit longer. You're still going to talk about how you got started in accounting, what you liked about it, what it meant to you. Then you're going to talk about your accounting years in college and maybe just a little bit more detail about what you did, maybe some of the clubs that you were active in. Then you're going to go into a little bit more detail about the internships that you had and what you did, what you liked about those, and then you're going to wrap it up with the end point of, hopefully in the next, 3 to 5 years, I would like to be employed by a large accounting firm and doing accounting for small businesses and hopefully achieve my CPA. So you have a long and a short version. Here's why you have a long and a short version. Let's say, for example, you go into the job interview and you sit down with the hiring manager and he's like, okay, Bob, tell me about yourself. So when he says it like that and you have maybe 45 minutes to interview, you can probably give the hiring manager the long version, the 45 seconds to a minute. Tell him the whole story. After you interview with the hiring manager is probably going to introduce you to some other people who may interview you. Now, you may only have 15 minutes. They might say, hey, Bob, come here. I want you to meet the director of human resources. Why don't you sit down with her for about 15 minutes? And she's going to say, okay, Bob, tell me about yourself. You really can't give her the long version. That's where you give her the short, compressed version, the one that takes 15 seconds, almost like an elevator pitch. I mean, you have to know when to give the long and when to give the short. Because if you don't have 2 different versions, you're going to end up giving everybody the long version. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to get bored. Or I interview people all the time. They're going to cut you off and they're going to be like, hey, that's great, Bob. We got to move on. We don't have time to listen to your life story. So you got it? Simple enough. So if you're fresh out of college, you create a starting point of when you want to start. And maybe that's in high school for you, or maybe that's earlier in your career, or maybe your starting point is college. Maybe you went to college for something and you changed your major. So you create your starting point there. That's really the key. You don't have to start in high school. You just have to decide what your starting point is. And that's one of the problems with all the other videos. They tell you, well, you need to start in high school. You need to start in college. You need to talk about every job you've ever had. No, all that stuff is just pure garbage. That's somebody else pressing and forcing their model onto you that doesn't fit you, because you are a unique individual. You need to create a story around you that fits you. So decide where you want to start, decide what you want to talk about, and then decide where you want to end your story. And then create two versions. Create the long one first, and then create the short one. And that's all you got to do. So here's a little tip. So when you're closing your answer, you know how I talked about in the accounting example where I'm looking to work in a large accounting firm and get my CPA within the next 3 to 5 years? You want to end that in a way that's aligned with the position. So if you're interviewing for any type of accounting position, they're obviously going to want you to get your CPA someday. So it's good to include that type of information in your response. And it just kind of rounds out your answer and finishes it off in a nice professional way that shows that you are aligned with the goals of that organization. So that's how you answer Tell Me About Yourself when you're fresh out of college. But what about if you've been working for 20 or 30 years? Well, you still need to decide when to start your story. And then you need to decide what you're going to say, and then you need to create that ending point like I talked about. So let's take me, for example. If someone asked me, tell me about yourself, I would start off and say, well, I went to college for computer technology. After I graduated from college, I ended up working in the IT industry where I assisted small businesses by implementing new computer systems for them. After working in the IT for a while, I ended up graduating to a project manager where I worked and hired a lot of different engineers for various projects. And after 20 years in the field, I retired from information technology. And I moved into creating digital training programs that help job seekers interview and prepare for interviews. And today I work with employers and I teach them how to properly interview job candidates so that they find the proper alignment in their company. That's it. That's the real Tell Me About Yourself for Don Georgevich. Now that's the short version. If you ask me the long version, if you'll notice, I'm going to cover all the same points, but I'm just going to expand on them. So I would say, I went to college for computer technology. After I graduated from college, I worked for NASA in Cleveland, Ohio for about 5 years, where I evaluated different technologies and I brought in a lot of different technology vendors to the NASA laboratory to showcase their technology so that other engineers could see what was new and what was the greatest. After 5 years at NASA, I moved on and I worked at a small IT company in Cleveland, Ohio, where I learned a lot of Microsoft technologies and I learned how to implement those solutions into small businesses, manufacturing businesses in the Cleveland area. And after doing that for a while, I moved up into a project manager role where I would manage other engineers. And then I graduated to a level where I started hiring other engineers for various projects. And after doing that for about 20 years, I moved into starting my own business where I wrote books and I taught job seekers how to interview for jobs. I've also created books on how to write resumes and cover letters and just a lot of different training programs. I've created a massive YouTube channel with a huge following on it. And today, I've moved on from training job seekers on how to interview for jobs to training employers on how to properly interview candidates for jobs. So there you go. That's the long version of the Tell Me About Yourself for Don Georgevich. And you can see the short version kind of just captures all the same points that I touched about in the long version, but the long version just kind of decompresses my story a little bit more and gives you just a better feel. Now, it depends. Sometimes I might give the short version depending on how much time I have, or I might give the long version. I mean, that's all there is to it. And how you answer the question really depends on you and what you feel. There's other videos out there, so be careful when you watch them all and try not to force your life story into somebody else's template. Your answer needs to come from you, from your heart, and what you feel. Don't feel that you need to jam every accomplishment that you've ever had into the story, because that's not what the employer's asking. They're saying, tell me about yourself. They're not asking you to tell me about your greatest accomplishments and every job that you've ever had. They want to see that you are the real deal, that you are genuine. Now, if they want to know more about you, then they're just going to ask. They're going to be like, so Don, can you tell me a little bit more about your time at NASA? Or can you tell me a little bit more time about when you were a Microsoft trainer? They might pick parts of your story that they want to know more about. So don't feel that you need to give them the full story the first time. Just touch on all those elements and create a little story so that your short version is like 10 or 15 seconds long and your long version is maybe 45 to 60 seconds at the most. And that's all you got to do. That's all there is to it. Now, I hate to break this to you, but that's all I have for you. And they are going to ask you other questions in your interview other than tell me about yourself. That's usually one of the first questions they ask, but they're going to ask you other questions. And for that, I have the perfect thing for you. Head on over to jobinterviewtools.com/top10 and download this guide. This is the top 10 questions. It's got everything in there, like tell me about yourself, why do you want to work here, what are your greatest strengths, what are your weaknesses, why should we hire you? I cover all those questions in this guide, and I do it from the point of view that I tell you what you can say, what you should say, and what you shouldn't say, because both that they're equally important. And I also give you several sample answers for all of those questions. So download this guide. Like I said, it's like 20, 30 pages here. It's free. You can have it as my gift to you just for sharing some time with me while I teach you how to answer this question the right way. But download this guide. It's going to help you prepare for all the different angles that interviewers are going to come at you from. Because if this is your first interview, they're going to be asking you all kinds of different questions, and it's just going to drive you nuts. And you're going to probably feel overwhelmed in the interview. But this little book here, read it, for, 20, 30 minutes. It's going to kind of help you feel a lot more comfortable in your next interview so that you are not overwhelmed by all of their questions. It's going to give you some idea of what you can expect on the interview. Now, obviously, they're going to ask you more than 10 questions, and for that, I have other programs. If you're interested in those, they will cover, hundreds of different questions. But start here first, and practice your answer to tell me about yourself, and get yourself comfortable answering that question. Even record yourself in front of a camera, kind of like we are right now, and then go back and watch yourself and see how you sound. And are you happy with it? And if you're happy with the way you sound, maybe show that video to somebody else and say, hey, what do you think of this? Do I sound good, or am I leaving something out? And just get some other feedback. And that should help you make you feel a lot more comfortable about delivering that response. But you really should never feel uncomfortable talking about yourself. I mean, it's just a simple question. Tell me about yourself. Give them the short and skinny version, and that should give them a good feeling for who you are, what you're looking for, and where you want to be. And those are just the basic elements for that question. So that is all I have for you, my friend, today. And I sincerely wish you the very best of luck on your next interview. And if you like this channel, you like this video, you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to my channel, like this video, share it with a friend, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye now.